presentation mode since this is recording here. Welcome everybody. I know this is an important topic for everybody. We are doing a feasibility analysis that is sponsored by IMLS for the transfer of the potential transfer, I should say, of the academic library survey to from the Institute of Educational Sciences to IMLS. Matt Bernbaum, who's the director of the IMLS program, is one of the key staff members in that program, and Marisa Pelzer is the other key staff member. Marisa is with us today. Marisa?
Hi, this is Marisa. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I have been working with the IMLS for almost 6 years, and I manage the Public Library Survey and the State Library Administrative Agency Survey.
Great. Here, this slide is Martha, myself, and QualityMetrics is conducting this study for IMLS. And here we have, I'm working on this study with Emily Goode. Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Goode. I'm working with Martha, as she said, as a consultant on this project for QualityMetrics, and I'm also the Director of Library Assessment at Georgetown University.
And the person we thank really deeply for getting this meeting underway was a last, really a quick attempt to try to get on the ALA program to spread the word that this study is happening is Mary Jane Petrovsky. Mary Jane?
Hi, everybody. I'm here in Chicago today, and I have managed the ACRL academic library statistics program since, I don't know, 2005. And that includes our annual ACRL Academic Library Trends and Statistics Survey, which incorporates as a key part the IPEDS academic library component. So of course, we're very interested in this development.
Yeah. So as background, the Academic Libraries Survey is currently a component within the Integrated Postsecondary Education Data System, the IPEDS survey. But the National Center for Education Statistics, NCES, in the U.S. Department of Education is contemplating removing it from the IPEDS entirely. NCES reached out to IMLS in 2020 to see if there was interest in IMLS assuming responsibility for the academic libraries component of IPEDS. And this study is an attempt to assess the feasibility of IMLS taking on the role of administering this survey. Just a couple of words on the evolution of federal academic library surveys. They've had a home at NCES since 1966. It has taken a different form over the years. It used to be part of HEGIS until '88. It became part of IPEDS when IPEDS replaced HEGIS. In 2000, between 2000 and 2012, there was a collaboration with NCLIS. There was a commission for library and information services. And there was a distinct unit within NCES called the Library Statistics Unit. At that time, the survey was biennial. The Academic Library Survey was biennial. And back in 2014, it became again part of IPEDS when the Library Statistics Unit was dissolved. When it became part of IPEDS in 2014, it became annual again, though the survey length was reduced substantially. So as we are commencing this feasibility study, we're at the very early stages. We've had meetings with the advisory group that advises IPEDS on the Academic Library Survey. And we will be spending the next 2 months collecting more information and feedback on the aspects around the transfer. We expect to have the study to IMLS in September, and there'll be work to be done, of course, after that in needing to have a continuing relationship between IMLS and the current unit within NCES that runs the survey, and of course, continuing awareness and library engagement. So the organizations that are engaged, and as you can see in this slide, in the next slide, in the Academic Library Survey component, could involve a combination of IMLS, which is sponsoring this study, and the Department of Education NCES unit, as well as the associations that currently run annual surveys for academic libraries. Marisa, a few words about IMLS here.
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. Some of you may be familiar with the Institute of Museum and Library Services, but we're a federal independent grant-making agency and the primary source of federal support for our nation's libraries and museums. And our mission is to advance, support, empower America's museums and libraries and related organizations through grant-making, research, and policy development. And we envision a nation where museums and libraries work together to transform the lives of individuals and communities. That's Ike. He's not even in my room, but he will affect my conference calls. I am a member of the Office of Research and Evaluation, and our functions are detailed in IMLS's authorizing legislation, which states that we collaborate and consult with state library agencies, libraries and museum organizations, and other relevant agencies to conduct our research, evaluations, and data collections. Under those auspices, we run 2 long-term establishment data collections, which began with NCLIS in the prior slide that Martha showed. And our office also supports evaluations of IMLS grant programs. Annually, we evaluate the LSTA formula grant, and last year we, for example, evaluated the African American Culture and Heritage grant program. We also support our agency's annual performance reporting and other research. And both of our surveys, we have a robust set of data products, including annual reports, statistical tables, research briefs, fully documented data files and documentation that meet OMB standards, like the IPEDS data files. And we also run a public library search and compare tool to help peers benchmark. And I think that's my spiel.
Yeah, IMLS has actually a robust and expanding, I should say, unit for doing data analysis. You're hiring 3 new people now, Marisa?
Yes, we're hiring a statistician, 2 additional FTEs, and then I think we're bringing on 2 PhD students to help. So we're more than doubling our staff in the next few months, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
We also may be familiar with Emily Plowman is working with us now, though she's on a firewall and can't deal with ALA issues for the moment. So
she used to work for the Public Library Association. No. Yeah. So in the next slide, I just wanted to ponder a little bit how many academic libraries engage in collecting and submitting data to the IPEDS academic library survey. There are more than 7,000 institutions that are being called to in the database, but not all of them are eligible. So they have to have a certain budget to be eligible. But for those institutions that are eligible, anything between one person to a dozen people in each library engage in that data collection in some of the larger systems. And especially in the larger institutions, both the assessment librarian and the institutional research office person is engaged with the academic library survey. On the next slide, you actually see the members of the Joint Advisory Task Force on IPEDS that we interviewed so far. And many of them are with us here today. Mary Jane.
Yeah, let me say just a few words about this on behalf of the task force. This is a group that was established in 2015 in order to advise the director of the IPEDS academic library component. And this group has worked since then to make improvements to the IPEDS definitions, to introduce new questions, and to update the library community, as things changed, and let people know we were in fact responding to feedback and pain points. So this group worked very closely with Christopher Cody, who manages this section of the IPEDS survey. And it is the only section actually of the IPEDS survey that has an advisory group that provides input and makes recommendations for changes. And this arrangement has proven so successful that Chris is going to recommend that this model be extended to the other 11 components of the IPEDS survey, that include human resources and finance and enrollment and so forth. So anyway, this the task force has had a number of meetings with Martha's team over the past few weeks to consider the implications from various perspectives. So we're really appreciative that that we've had a chance to weigh in. So it has taken some time, as you can see, to consider all the ramifications. And I'll just say personally, when I first learned about the impending transfer on a Sunday, I thought, oh no, not another migration. But it was a good chance to step back and think about, how will this be received or perceived by the field? What is going to be the effect potentially from moving it from a sort of a compulsory survey that all schools who receive Title IV money have to complete to going to a lower response rate potentially. So there were really lots of things to consider, and I hope our group was able to give Martha and her team some useful feedback on on issues and ramifications.
Yeah, we are showing here the questions on this slide that the group considered. Mary Jane?
Right. I'm sorry, we all probably can't see this. So under the political bucket, again, it was how will this be viewed, this change in ownership, so to speak? How will this be viewed in the field? I think our group was helpful in recommending other stakeholders that might be consulted regarding this opportunity or challenge. And then it's also, I think, a chance for us to think about and reflect on the current academic library component. I don't know how many of you live or breathe that survey, but it is short, it's annual, and you know, it does exclude a certain number of libraries that don't meet the screening requirements. So in the scientific bucket, there were thoughts about, we considered what effect the transfer from one agency to another might have on the response rate, who should or might be included in the survey universe, should a change occur, and what strategies or tactics might encourage participation. In other words, what might IMLS do? And just shifting quickly to administrative, it was interesting to consider what aspects of previous federal surveys might be considered or reviewed in making a change. I'll just tell you quickly that one of the things ACRL did was to rescue some of the academic library survey questions from 2000 to 2012 and restore them and put them into our annual survey because they were perceived as being really key metrics. We also considered possible benefits and outcomes from the transfer, and some of the administrative infrastructure that might need to be in place to make this a success.
Thank you, Mary Jane. We are on slide 25 now. So as we will review with you some of what we are hearing, we have a guiding question. So do the following observations you will hear resonate with you? Emily?
Yes. So we have, for each of the three areas that Mary Jane just reviewed, the political, scientific, and administrative, through those questions, working with the task force and others that we have reached out to gain insight, we've organized just a few of our observations so far. And this is the part of the conversation where we really want to hear from folks. So we'll spend about 5 minutes on each of these areas. Now, I think because we can't see each other, we can't, use the icons to raise our hands as we normally would in Zoom. I'd like to ask everyone to just make sure you're muted if you're not speaking. And if you wish to speak up, please unmute yourself. And that way, if we're careful with our mute buttons, I think we'll be able to. Okay, I unmuted myself by pressing *6. So I hope all of you all got that message as well. Martha, just confirm that you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so use that *6 or use your unmute button on your cell phone, and please join us in this conversation. The first set of observations, and again, we'll spend about 5 minutes here on the political observations. And going back to Martha's guiding question, do the following observations resonate with you? So what we heard from folks when we were discussing the political, the potential ramifications of this potential transfer was two main takeaways. One was the thought that repositioning the survey as part of IMLS, which has museums and libraries at its center, that could help the survey gain some focus, that it wouldn't get swept up as part of the broader context of IPEDS. So that was seen as an advantage, a potential advantage. On the other hand, one of the concerns was that decoupling the academic library data from the IPEDS data set could have a negative impact on academic libraries. So when libraries are thinking about how their data might be seen by administrators in higher education, when they need to make a case for how their library compares to other libraries at other similar institutions, removing it from that context could have negative consequences, potentially. So we'd like to reach out to you all and hear from you. What are your thoughts about those takeaways? Do those observations resonate with you? Does it make you have other concerns, other questions, or other potential benefits that you see? And remember, don't forget to unmute yourself, and then please identify yourself when you start speaking.
Hi, Emily. This is Laura Spears from Florida. And so I actually see both of those happening, at least for us, but I think more importantly, the ACRL component of, the academic library survey, I like the questions. I like the fact that they change on a regular basis and expand. And I do have the concern that taking it out of the IPEDS universe would impact us negatively, because we are, trying to make inroads to have library data included in the learning analytics that get reviewed on a regular basis at the university level. So I think that's, what my perception would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm going to move to the next slide, Emily.
Of course, sure. Let's look then at the scientific. Is that where you're headed for, Martha?
Yes.
Great. So these are on slide 27 for those of you who are sort of scanning along with us. Here are a few of the scientific aspect takeaways that we got through our conversations with the task force and a few other key stakeholders. We were concerned, or had been told, that a potential concern was maintaining a sufficiently high response rate. This would be necessary to comply with the Paperwork Reduction Act. We needed to make sure, Martha, correct me if I'm wrong, was it a 70% response rate that IMLS said they would need to maintain? Or Marisa, maybe you could make sure that I don't misrepresent that.
Yeah, you have to unmute, Marisa, but I think it was around the figure you quoted.
I see. Okay.
Emily.
And then the feedback we got in response to that concern was that as long as there are core or screening questions that are relatively easy to respond to, that shouldn't be a concern. That having that core questionnaire would allow folks in libraries to respond to those upfront questions, and then we could follow up with supplemental or optional questions. So that was the sense that we got, that maybe we didn't need to be too concerned about maintaining that high response rate, that should be achievable. The other piece of feedback that we thought was significant was about thinking about that advisory group model and what would make sense for a group to help inform the IMLS throughout this transition and into the next phase of what the academic libraries component could look like. And reaching out to that broad range of library types is really what we heard from folks, that we need to make sure that we are hearing from lots of different types of stakeholders. So again, do these observations resonate with you? Do you have any feedback about them? What do they make you think about? I'll go ahead and mute myself. Remember to unmute yourself to chime in.
And it's *6. I'll move into the next slide, Emily, that has the administrative findings.
Sure. So this one again, I think, has some takeaways that really speak to the IMLS experience. Thinking about their experience working with lots of different stakeholders to do the public library survey work that they do. I think I'll start with the second arrow or second bullet point on this slide, that IMLS really does have deep experience serving libraries nationwide, and so this would be an opportunity to leverage that experience. Back up to the first point, though, on the flip side, the challenge would be that whereas we have the state library organization sort of serving as a centralized point of contact for reaching out to those public library organizations, we don't have that same uniformity in academic libraries. We have ALA chapters, state library organizations may or may not have relationships with their academic library organizations. There are academic library consortia, but that depends on what state you're in or what region you're in. And so that could make outreach challenging. Again, we would love to hear from folks and know if these observations resonate with you. And again, *6 to unmute.
We have a couple of unmuted people. Any thoughts, observations?
This is Laura Spears again. I could see that would be a challenge, and I'm not sure how you would address that because the state agencies that we work with, whether it's the state library or our academic library consortium, they are already overtaxed, so I'm not sure how that would work. So it's definitely something that would be a valid concern.
Yeah, not all states collect data on academic libraries based on, at least from the state library agency perspective that we examined. There are only less than 10 state agencies that collect data on academic libraries. I'm going to move on with the slides and go to the milestones. So we're thinking of putting a document out there to collect feedback later this summer. We're going to have a draft feasibility study in September. We'll have the ongoing relationships between IMLS and NCES as we move forward. And of course, continuing broader library participation, and hopefully with a Zoom link that works next time. Apologies again. I wanted to sort of close the presentation part of this with some quotes from the interviews we had, the focus groups we had of the ALA, ACRL, ARL advisory group. Some of the words of the members of that group are here. A community input method with strong expert-based steering similar to the current IPEDS ARL-ACRL model makes sense, but the community of stakeholders needs to be larger. Another one, having IMLS play a leadership role in metric gathering would be an interesting first step into having that agency play a more visible and central role in library leadership, and that could be a very good thing. Third code, IMLS survey can be aligned with institutional IPEDS identifiers, and that makes sense. I would also think that some type of data dashboard that allows simple visualization and download would be valued. And the next quote, again, is from these focus groups. I also like the idea of a state of library investment report from IMLS. So our next step is going to be shaping options and provide more opportunities for feedback. This is, the first rollout that this study is happening. Most of you have now Emily's and my emails. Thank you for your patience in setting everybody with access to the slides in the beginning. We will be asking more engagement in the coming weeks. And I want to say a big thank you for your patience and my co-presenters for working through the snafu we had today. I'm going to stop the recording, but we can continue the conversation.